Messmer the Impaler was marketed as Shadow of the Erdtree's main big bad boss, and he has lived up to the hype for me in spades. In an extremely similar fashion to the Dancing Lion, Messmer takes massive inspiration from Dark Souls 1's DLC in that he shares many traits with Artorias, being the boss most emblematic of the DLC, being heavily featured in the marketing while not acting as the final boss, but remaining incredibly important to the overall story. Messmer's lore goes hard, the voice acting goes hard, the creativity and challenge in his moveset goes hard, and his design goes hard as hell. FromSoft hardly ever skimps when it comes to polish and love put into their bosses, but Messmer certainly feels like he was given as much love as possible. The learning curve on this guy is incredibly steep. It took me many attempts to progress past his first few attacks, but once a strategy developed to consistently avoid damage and deal some of my own, it started to click extremely fast. Rather than slowly doing better and better, it was much more of never surviving more than 30 seconds to suddenly routinely getting him close to his halfway phase transition more often than not. A stark contrast to one of the other main standout bosses in this DLC, Rolana. Lightning fast thrusts, spinning twirls, fire AoEs, and chaotic sprawling combos make up the brunt of his first phase moveset. When you get hit or die against Messmer, it is always your fault. The fight is pretty devoid of bullshit, bad luck, or poor hitboxes, and that results in every death being a learning opportunity while severely cutting down on the frustration of dying again and again. His main combo, his opening orb attack, and just his general attack patterns have such a gorgeous cadence to them that feel just wonderful to dodge and weave through before ending with a hefty punish. They also look incredible with the way Messmer slides and leaps around, not to mention his ever-present flames. With an ass mountain of health, a massive area leading up to him, an opening and transitional cutscene, plus a significant design and name change in Phase 2, Messmer feels a lot more like important Souls bosses of old. Shadow of the Erdtree curiously features a lot less boss cutscenes and dialogue, but it does make those rare moments feel even more momentous. Messmer benefits from this greatly. I'd also really like to shout out the sound design of this fight. His grab attack that ends in a spear thrust, despite dealing as much damage as any move I've ever seen, never failed to make me smile when it killed me. How can you be mad at a death when it looks and sounds this badass? Phase 1 ends when he hits half health, which is how all 2-phase bosses should be handled, and we get a lengthy cutscene where he plucks his eye out, crushes it, and transforms into base serpent Messmer. The similarity to Malenia when she becomes the goddess of rot is excellent. Phase 2 again opens with a similar orb attack, but with slightly different timings that I found way harder to learn for some reason. His red snake friend is now white, as if it has shed its skin, much like Messmer himself. Base serpent Messmer mostly has the same moveset as Phase 1, but adds in a few smaller moves and a handful of chaotic snake-based attacks with crazy range and blistering speed. I love how the white snake coiled around and within his entire body gives him an almost skeletal look, which suits this base theme much like the shedded snake. The OST takes on some eerier undertones and the fight's pace quickens. Something I love about this fight is how much Phase 1 prepares you for Phase 2. This is usually accomplished when the base moveset remains intact. There are new moves and a new rhythm to learn which keeps that second phase feeling tense and distinct, but as you're learning and struggling through the first phase, you're also training towards becoming better at the second. A boss like Godfrey turning into Hoaraloo or the King of Puppets turning into Romeo is great, and these bosses where they're essentially two entirely separate entities absolutely have their place. But I think it's nice when there's an elevation of the boss you've been struggling to conquer as opposed to a whole new boss you now have to learn. Malenia is a similar example. Although her Goddess of Rot form is a lot harder and more chaotic, the more you fight and overcome her Blade of Miquella form, the better you're getting at handling her Goddess of Rot form. And with all that being said, if I were to change one thing about Messmer, it would be the difficulty in his second phase. It's not quite hard enough for my liking. Phase 1 is pretty tricky to learn, but once you do learn it, it's absolutely seared into your brain. This means once you've gotten to Phase 2 a few times, you're gonna get there way more often than not. And since Phase 2 retains most of the same moveset, and the new moves added aren't overly difficult to figure out, you can go from finally managing to get Messmer down to half health to outright defeating him pretty quickly. This isn't like a massive knock on the fight or anything, just a bit of a critique. He hits hard enough that you're always in immense danger, and it's tough to find windows to heal, but only a handful of his moves combo directly into one another, meaning it's rare for one tiny mistake to be a death sentence because your rhythm rarely falls completely out of whack. With some bosses, if you mistime a dodge in a certain combo, you'll end up getting hit by every single additional attack since there isn't enough time to recalibrate your cadence. But Messmer's delays often allow for the ability to refocus and get back into rhythm, which, the more I say it, is actually pretty fucking cool. It further encourages you to remain calm and resist the urge to start panic rolling, since a misstep can be recovered from with enough skill. Messmer is truly one of the best first experiences I've ever had with a boss. Though only time will tell, I can easily see Messmer solidifying himself as one of my all-time favorite FromSoft bosses. From the oppressive difficulty at first to the immaculate sound design and phenomenal aesthetic choices like the snake's wings or his cool as shit weapon, Messmer really has everything going for him. Will any other bosses in this DLC even come close to him? Well, I keep hearing a lot of people hyping up this old dragon.